Do you want our mutes on or off?
Let's see. I don't know. Hey, this is welcome to Chattanooga Writers Guild. I'm Mark Anderson, your host tonight. And tonight we're going to be meeting with, first it's November 3rd of 2020. We're recording this during global shutdown, global health crisis. So we're all Zooming. And today is election day in the USA. And we're sure to find out the results of that election in a couple of months or so. And anyway, we are tonight interviewing the group called Creative Nonfiction and Poetry. What a unique name. We'll talk about that later. So let me introduce our guests here. On my left, Sherry Poff. She is a writer and avid reader living in Ooltewah, Tennessee. She joined the Chattanooga Writers Guild in November 2001, just 2 months after its inaugural meeting. Right away, Sherry became active in the Guild, leading a small critique group. She has served on the board for a total of 6 years. In 30 years as an educator, Sherry has taught students on all levels from elementary to college. Her poetry and nonfiction pieces have appeared recently in 2 anthologies, Flash Fiction Food and Reflections on Generosity and Thanks. On my right is Ann Gillen. Ann has written off and on for several decades and has work published in Pine Song, Bayleaf, Wind Hover, the CWG 2019 anthology, and will be published in the coming 2020 anthology. Her love of music prompts her to search for sounds and rhythms in her poems that make them sing and dance as she loves to paint images with words. She particularly enjoys the challenge of writing from poetry, sonnets, villanelles, sestinas, etc. She has never submitted her work for publication except to enter contests where winners receive publication in anthology. She has published 5 papers in scientific literature and written a chapter on hemoglobin for a clinical chemistry textbook. After living and working in Raleigh, North Carolina for 38 years, she has retired to Chattanooga, Tennessee with her husband, daughter, while her son lives and works in Korea. Leanne, raise your hand. Which one is Leanne? Hi there.
There you are.
The problem is I realize I'm probably doing a mirror image. So when I say on my right, I'm like, and I don't know if that's going to work on the screen. It's probably opposite. Whatever. Ray Zimmerman there on the lower row. Raise your hand, Ray. Who's Ray? Ray has worked as a park ranger naturalist in the tourism industry. His freelance journalism has appeared in Chattanooga Pulse, the Appalachian Voices website. His poetry has appeared in Catalpa, the Avochat, #1, the Weatherings Anthology, the Southern Poetry Anthology of Tennessee, and his chapbook, First Days, is available from Finishing Line Press. Let me show you some of Ray's books here. Avochat. This is his little chapbook called Healing and Conflict that he didn't even mention in that. We put this together called Well Inked. And then he's in this, the Southern Poetry Anthology.
That's from Texas Review Press.
Yeah.
They do a different volume on each state. Each year they do a volume on a different state.
And you're in, anyway, let's go on to Bille. Bille? All right, charter member and twice board member of Chattanooga Writers Guild. Finn has written poetry since his teenage years in Copenhagen. Both his master's thesis and his doctoral dissertation dealt with poetry, and he likes to say, I don't know nothing. His new collection called The King's Coin, Danish American Poems, as well as his fire poems, can be purchased at Winder Binder Bookstore on Fraser Avenue, North Chattanooga. Fire Poems by Finn Bille. We mentioned, so we've done everyone. And we mentioned the anthologies of the Chattanooga Writers Guild. Here we go back. I think this is the first one, 2015. 2016, and I could go through here and just about everyone on the screen there, I think all of us have been in one of these anthologies more than once. 2017, and this is the most recent one, and we have one coming up very soon. We'll have a launch party for that as soon as the editor. Okay, so let's talk about this group. When did the CNFP group start? What does CNFP mean? That's the initials for it.
It's Creative Nonfiction and Poetry.
How did you come up with such a creative name?
Well, back in 2001, I'm going to give you the short history.
Okay.
I began leading a nonfiction group, just nonfiction, and we did everything. And then the group split and dwindled, and there were no hard feelings. It's just that, you know, people began meeting in different places. And then it dwindled, and I began to think maybe we needed to do something different. At the same time, there was a Poetry 2 group. Ray, Ray, you started that, right? In the old Pasha
That's
Coffee
correct.
House.
Yeah.
And then that group was going to dissolve. And so we began talking, and I don't remember who started the conversation, but we began to say maybe we could combine these two groups. And John and I agreed to co-lead the groups. John isn't here tonight, he's working, but we agreed to co-lead the group, and John insisted that it not just be any nonfiction, but creative nonfiction, as opposed to something like technical nonfiction. You know, I think all writing is creative writing. That's a whole different conversation. But anyway, so creative nonfiction and poetry, and we got together and joined forces to keep us from dissolving. And I think it's worked really well.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it seems
At one
like as
point-
creative writers, go ahead, Ray.
At one point, I was running out of gas as a leader of the Poetry 2 group, and I asked John to take over. I
Okay.
asked John if he was interested in taking it over, and he said he would do so, but he wanted to move it to a different venue. And so it moved to its current venue. And at that time, I think the Creative Nonfiction group joined.
Right.
And then we moved to the Chattanoogan. When was that? I didn't join until we moved to the Chattanooga.
The Broad Street Grill.
Way back when.
Yeah, that's been what, 6 years? Has it been that many?
I'd
Maybe,
say so.
yeah, at least 6 years, I think. We've been met there until March
Okay.
or
I'm gonna
April.
keep us moving here. So it seems like as creative writers, we would have a creative name for our group. And I've got a couple of suggestions here. Wonder Writers of Chattanooga, Writers of the Good Life, Writers are World Changers. What do you think? You think you're just going to stick with CNFP? I think if I was going to get inspired. And then the other thing is, like, out of all of our groups in the guild, who do you think has the best writers?
Ooh,
Oh, I don't think
I'm not going
We don't
to
even go there.
Oh, you're not? Well, you know, we have a contest going on, and I kind of think that this group has some pretty good talent in it, but, you know, Helga's poetry group called The Poetry Group they got some pretty good talent too there. I was just wondering, and then I'm amazed at all the talent we have, but I'm just wondering who's really the best.
Well, Ray sitting here with it. Didn't Ray win first place this month?
We do have
Yes.
an advantage. He won this month.
But it
And
was
I
in
will
fiction.
say, I fully expected to win.
Yeah.
I kept watching my email, and then I saw that someone else had won. So,
Yeah.
I'm the same way as you are, Sherry. I kept thinking, that's a good poem. I should win.
only I wrote a story this time.
And we
a
both could have
fiction.
won.
Yeah, but Ray's story was apparently
It was.
better.
Yeah.
It was
And
a
then
very
Mark
good
won
story.
last month. So
Right,
I won
right.
in September. So actually, I should tell for the video, I am actually part of this group. So I participate every month. So I'm a little bit biased, and I think this group has done a lot for me. And I want to ask you now, why do you all come to this? Why have you persisted in it? What does it do for you in your writing?
Well, it's a very congenial and positive group that gives good positive responses to what we submit, and that's why I like it. Besides, I can have a beer while we meet. That's pretty important.
I usually go for the chocolate there, but everything else that Finn said is true.
So we used to meet, we normally have met down at the Chattanooga Hotel in their restaurant area there. They have the Broad Street Grill and they have the bar lounge area in their main restaurant. So that's where we meet. Typically the first Tuesday of the month at about 7 o'clock. And then how does it work? Do you guys submit I already know this, but for the sake of our video, how does this work, Sherry? Do people submit their writing in advance, or what do you do?
We ask people to bring something, and if possible, to bring multiple copies and then we pass around. If I have a poem or a story, I give everybody a copy. And then as I read it aloud, everyone makes notes, notes of things that are working well and things that are not working well, or questions that they have. And then after the reading, we, take time to discuss those things. Oh, there's Finn. And I, like Finn, I find it very helpful. I value the opinions of the people in this group. I know they're going to tell me the truth, but not be offensive, and that's nice. And so we just help each other. We give comments and suggestions and ask questions, and usually each person has about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how many show up with work.
So typically we allow ourselves to go to until 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And Sherry will do the math and divide up the evening, our time. And if it's a big crowd, we might only have 10 minutes each, but if it's usually we get 15 to 18 minutes or something. And she sets a timer. And so we have enough time. If we're in person in the restaurant, we bring paper copies to pass around the table. And we'll have, if you want to use up your whole bring a 10,000 word piece and use your whole time reading it, that's up to you, I guess. People typically bring 500 words or
less. Yeah.
Or much less. And so we have time to read it and then comment on it. Leanne, what do you've been a part of this for a while. Why do you come to it?
I've been a part of it for about 2.5 years now. And as several other people have mentioned, it's a very supportive group. I have been in other critique groups that were not supportive. Or you sort of got the feeling that they really didn't know what they were talking about, which kind of sounds arrogant, but it does happen. And so I do respect what comments I hear. And as I think Sherry mentioned, we all pass around copies, and even if another individual doesn't have a chance to express everything that they have made comments about, they pass those on back to you, so you have their written comments that you can then pull out later when you're doing a revision and look at all of them and decide, well, that works, or that didn't work, well, that's a good idea, maybe we should do this. So you have not only at the meeting feedback, but you have continuing feedback in their written comments. I really like that.
I know after our meetings, I always go home and pull out all those copies and do my revision that night. What about you, Ray? You've been a part of this for a while.
Okay. I respect the opinions of the members of the group. I know that they are supportive, but will not let me get by with substandard work. So it's criticism that's constructive and done in a positive manner. And I do trust them to know what they're talking about. I've been in several writing groups since I started writing, and I've been in groups where everything was just positive, and I walked away with writing that still had flaws in it that hadn't been caught. And I've been in groups where things have gotten very confrontational. I've been in groups where there were outspoken people who controlled the discussion but didn't necessarily know much about writing.
Yeah.
So, you have to be careful who you let edit your work.
Oh, yeah.
That you can be led astray quite easily. And I trust this group to have support but reliable opinions.
I know when I go home and do my revisions, some of them, I have to say, I know that person was well-intentioned, but I'm going to have to listen to my own gut here. I'm going to stick with this. And then other times it's like, wow, I'm glad this is so perfect. I need to revise this. So these writing groups really are just a major part of the Chattanooga Writers Guild, and we want everyone to know about the groups. And if there's not room in a current existing group, then we're going to start some more. And that's kind of the reason we're making these little interviews. You think there's more room for more in this group?
I think so. I know we've had this could be a long discussion, but you can get a group that's too big, and then there really isn't time for everyone to be heard. I think we've done pretty well with 6 to 8. There are 5 of us here tonight. If you get much bigger than that, it really does get difficult to give everyone a turn.
Yeah. John Mannone is not here tonight, and he's really co-leader of it and just a major part of this.
Right.
Yeah, well, John has always had some very constructive comments for anybody who shows up. He's very active, and I always appreciate his comments. I want to say this about the membership. We've had some very interesting new people come in who have contributed significantly to the quality of critique. Oh yeah, and we've really had some surprising, I thought, contributions, a different view of things, a different way to look at it, and that has been very good. I hope we can get more fresh talent into the group.
Yeah.
Good. So let's move on to our discussion about writing. And I wanted to pose a question to each of you. If you are a judge in a contest, or when you read poetry or really any form of literature, what are the 2 highest quality elements that you look for? What would be at the top of your list? It's like, this is what separates average from excellent, excellent from average. Sherry, you first?
Well, I guess work needs to hold together. You know, it needs to mean something. And when I finish reading it, you know, poetry particularly can require a second reading, and that's okay. But I should have a sense of a message when I finish reading it. You know, I want words that seem to be the right words, a precise use of language. I guess that's, you know, that's a short way of saying what I think is good writing.
Thanks. Leanne, what about you?
I probably have critiqued more poetry than any of the other forms, and it's been interesting to look at other forms besides poetry. But when I'm doing poetry, I essentially look at two different things, sound and words. And when I'm speaking of sound, one thing I always do is read it out loud. I want to see how it flows, what kind of rhythm is inside it, hearing the kinds of rhymes. Is there internal rhyme or external rhyme? Is there onomatopoeia? Is there alliteration, accent? All those things that make a poem hang together and move naturally for you. It seems natural, although a good poem is a lot of work to do, but the result is it's very natural. The other thing is in the images that are produced by the words, do they touch the senses? Do we see, can we smell what they're talking about, or taste it, or even feel the touch? And I think that's very important, that you get these sensory inputs through the words that are chosen when you write a poem. So those are two aspects I look at, sound and the word images.
Cool. Finn, what about you?
Well, I think first and foremost, I look for a sort of artistic, linguistic competence and literacy. And so once I've gotten over that and that has been achieved, I look for unity like Leanne does, and like Sherry also taught me, unity, a structure. I'm very, very sensitive to structure and whether there are adequate repetitions, echoes from one stanza to another, etc. And so use of language and structure and hanging together, like well, that was Sherry's way of putting it, holding it together. Yeah, that's right. So other than that, there are a lot of other considerations. Oh yeah, let me just mention, when I was teaching writing in high school, I had a test. I would write on a paper, this does not pass the so what test. And, you know,
Yes, yes.
And if it doesn't pass the so what test, well, we don't want to read it. No, thanks.
Right.
And some of the things very young writers write just, well, don't pass that test. And so that's another thing.
Ray, what about you?
I think for poetry, rhythm is very important. I write some form poems, and of course, in form poems, it's very exacting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to the days when I was learning poetry in school, and we talked about iambic pentameter and tetrameter and trochaic rhythms. It's rather old-fashioned, but I like those things. I like a poem to have a definite rhythm, and I'm not opposed to rhyme. Rhyme can trivialize the poem if you're not careful with it. Done well, it's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that poems must rhyme. I think free verse is fine. I wish I could write in blank verse, but I don't know anyone who can.
Well, I
Shakespeare.
try.
Yeah, right. But blank verse with a regular iambic pentameter rhythm, I just can't do. Maybe some folks can, but I wish I could. And the sense of it. Does the poem take a risk? I think I was in a workshop with another member who's not in this group, but in the other poetry group, who said, ask yourself what's at risk in this poem.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
How about you, Mark?
Well, since I'm a member of this, I guess I'll, I love imagery in whatever I read across the board. It's those visual images that an artist can convey that make a text rich and exciting to read. In poetry, I agree that sounds, reason that poetry is attractive because it's an oral art. We want to hear the sounds of the words. And then finally, meaning. Whatever I read, the artist needs to give us some shared meaning. We read literature because we have a human experience, common human experience. Like we all have feelings about love or loss of love, fear, anger, disappointment, all those universal human experiences. And if, say, in a nonfiction journal type piece, if the person shares their own experience, but somehow it's not meaningful to me, they're not able to make it a shared experience, then it's like, yeah, okay, but I love when there's something meaningful in it. And maybe that's the problem, is what's meaningful to me isn't going to be meaningful to someone else always. So we're probably kind of selective, but I look for something that really strikes me personally is, wow, this is a powerful, meaningful piece of work.
Yeah. I really think for that reason that poetry and nonfiction go together very well. Because I think a well-written poem deals with truth of some kind.
Yeah.
You can have a narrative poem, Song of Hiawatha or something that just tells a story, but most of the time I think poetry deals with some kind of truth, and so I think we have a really good mix, and I love it when we meet and everybody has we get such a variety.
Well, human experience is full of tension and difficulties and drama, and that's when art packs a bunch of it in there, then we all enjoy that.
Right.
So we are going to give us some chances to read some of our stuff. And are y'all ready with something short to read? Should we start with? Sherry again?
Well, okay. I decided to read, you mentioned early on this little anthology that was put together this summer. So I'm just going to read a poem from this anthology.
Okay.
Okay. It's called March 1st. I'll show you the illustration. The illustrations are really nice in here. Do you see that? Can you see that? Whoops.
I'm going to change this to speak. Okay.
There you go. Somebody, this was put together here in town, and I think the people did a really nice job. Okay, the poem is called.
Who was the motive force behind
It's
it?
Ella, ELLA Library. That is.
That's Jasmine.
Yes.
And it's, Ella is English language. Let's see. English. East Lake Language Arts.
Yeah.
East Lake Language Arts.
Yeah. So she put together this thing on in the spring, and you know, on generosity and thanks. Anyway, now I've lost my page, but it's called March 1st. Out of school for bad weather, I dice a potato, feel the wet velvet on my fingers, scrub and slice 2 carrots with sunburst centers, frozen peas, white corn, pungent celery leaves, and last September's cherry tomatoes, chopped and frozen for the day I would need to believe in summer. Pot simmering, I step into near darkness. The day's gloom gives way to pink marble behind wet black branches and the faintest hint of a crescent moon. Daffodils and pears are in bloom. Bright spears of forsythia pierce the gray blanket of evening as hungry I turn home. Steaming fragrance welcomes me. Against the side of the pot, my spoon's silver edge easily cuts through a chunk of potato. I ladle the promise into my bowl.
Very nice.
Nice. Like that. That's great.
And it's a true story.
That was very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell us when did you write that? And what was the situation? What inspired it?
Well, it was not this past March, but the previous March, I really was out of school for bad weather. It was a gloomy day. I started a pot of soup, and I was peeling the potatoes and chopping the carrots and doing all these things. I was just really kind of immersed in all the smells and the feelings, and that it was quiet. I was working by myself, and so all of these images just kind of piled up. And then I went for a walk, just as the poem describes, and I thought, Wendell Berry said or wrote that sometimes when you're trying to write a poem, what you need to do is just describe what it is you see, and don't worry about trying to make it sound a certain way. Just describe it the best you can, and then you can tinker with it and put in line breaks and things like that. But that's what I did here. I thought, I'm just going to describe my evening making this pot of soup and taking a walk, and then that was the result.
It worked.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice that a poet has a way to express that. I'm sure many people see that, but not everyone takes the time to write it down.
And it is one of those experiences a lot of people can identify with.
Forsythia.
I think.
After a gray winter, and the forsythia responds to those little yellow blossoms that come out.
Yeah, so hopeful.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Leanne,
welcome.
what do you have?
I have a poem that I wrote in 2018 and was published. It was a first place winner for the North Carolina Poetry Society's Caldwell Nixon Jr. Award, which is for children's poetry ages 4 to 12. And I like to write for children, and I am a naturalist by avocation. I'm something that's a lifelong love of nature, and I wanted to try to help children just see the glory and wonder of the world around them, and how everything is a circle. I guess you watch enough of The Lion King and you get, Hakuna Matata and the circle of life. And my daughter keeps reminding me of the circle of life all the time. So the name of the poem is called Birth to Death. Sort of takes it all in. A seed unpacks its cozy home and pushes through the rich, moist loam, while thirsty roots thrust into soil a tiny stem. 2 leaves uncoil. The forest litters fertile mass of mosses, Mushrooms, blooms, and grass enrich the seedling's steady growth to sturdy trunk, bright leaves, or both. The storms of summer shake the leaves while branches bob in summer's sleeves, and whispers of a breeze blow round as wings of seeds and fluffs float down. The seasons shift, the days grow short, while actions from the light abort as summer smocks shift golden red, and seeds and leaves and fruits are shed. The trees now rest in silent sleep, a cloak of snow, the roots reach deep till light grows long. The buds awake, the roots drink rain, the saps uptake. The ancient trees of weathered plate and lichen spots accommodate a perch for thrushes, kinglets, wrens, raccoons, gray squirrels, a black bear's den. In moist, dark woods, decaying logs are food to slugs and isopods and spiders, millipedes and snails, and bracket fungi, ants, morels.
That is so nice.
Thank
Yeah.
So if I had a highlight, if I saw that in pen there, and I, let's see, I gotta ask you guys, unmute. I muted us while she was reading. If I had that written and a highlighter and I went through all the SE sounds, there would be lots of yellow highlighter in it. I was listening to that repetition of the silver, she's, you know, so many. And yet every line was a new image. You know, you just went through all those little images of all that natural. That's what I heard. What did you guys think? Anyone else? Would comment on that? What was the setting for that? What brought that about? Ann?
Oh, you're asking me? I have a woods behind my house, and I usually get a chance to go out in the woods there, or any woods I get near. I'm out there looking, and I just love to see how the forest changes through the seasons. And I think that too many people just simply, they walk a path and they say, oh yeah, there's a tree. Oh look, there's a maybe, you know, they don't really understand that everything is connected, and that you know, if they see a tree that's fallen on the ground, they think, why did they clean that up? You know, get some rakes, right? Get it out of there. What good is a tree that's fallen down? And that's, I want to try to show, you know, children and other people who read it, that everything has a purpose in the forest, and it's all part of the cycle of life, and there really isn't any waste. Everything, and people don't really see that. So that's
Many.
Well, that's the second poem tonight that's delved in right into the heart of nature. I think this group, I know Ray and Finn, will probably hear some more. Let's see, so are we ready for Finn to read? Do you have something?
Yeah, I do. I have a poem that I've read, and at one of our groups. I don't think it was this one, but hey, I've also worked on it, so here it is. Azalea. Outside my window where I write this verse, azaleas bloom, absorb declining light and glow translucent pink. And, as in poetry, a prickly holly thrusts up through blooming bush to gather light for thorns. And as in life, light fades to leave all luminescence dull as scratched enamel. But as in dreams, the ruby-throated hummingbird returns to petals pearled with dew, infused with splendors of the rising sun. It hovers, probes, and sips, then flits away. That's Azalea.
Azalea. What was the what inspired that?
Well, I usually write where I am now in the basement, but I was writing at my desk in my office upstairs, and right outside my window where I write this verse, azaleas bloom, literally. And this is right there. And so I wrote about what I saw right in front of me. And I think that's a good thing to do, you know. Yeah. And this is very, very literal. There was a prickly holly branch from a holly tree that just came right up through that bush. And I thought, okay, that I can do something with that. So, and then the ruby-throated hummingbird really did visit those azaleas.
Sure.
And the sight of the ruby-throated hummingbird in the late sun with those beautiful flowers was just amazing, inspiring.
So
Fantastic.
a little bit on the process. Since you wrote it, how many revisions have you done, or how long has it
I think so far about 5 or 6 revisions, and there'll probably be more. There probably will be more. I like it the way it is, but I have these files right here on my desk, and I take out one at a time and read the latest, and then I say, wait a minute, I think there's something here that can be improved, and then I make some notes and maybe rewrite or just make some notes about a single thing, put it back in the file, stick it back in my group of poems that I'm working on, and I'm always working on several poems. So it takes me about a month to write a poem. I mean, to get through several revisions and to feel like it's publishable, ready to go. Yeah.
So, Ray, why don't you unmute? And Ray, do you have something to read?
I'm going to recite one.
Okay.
I'll tell you its origins. It began when a friend gave me this book, The Making of a Poem by Mark Strand and Evan Boland. And I read those as exemplary poems in the various styles. And it's one of my poems that's not a nature poem. It's in heroic couplets, and there's a danger to that, which I'll explain later. But this is the poem. A Chattanooga lookout. The Lookouts got their first shot at fame, a New York Yankees exhibition game. They signed Jackie Mitchell, a publicity stunt, but she pitched like a pro, not some sorry runt. The starter gave up a hit and a double. They sent Jackie in to heal this trouble. She struck out Babe Ruth, the third up to bat. She struck out Lou Gehrig, imagine that. Lazera, she walked, put a third man on base. The manager pulled her just to save face. The commissioner said that she had to go. Should women play baseball? He just said no. But Jackie played on in House of David fame. That barnstorming team won many a game. The men all wore beards and long hair to boot. She donned a fake beard, thought it was a hoot. She wasn't afraid of a publicity stunt, but she pitched like a pro, not some sorry runt.
That's a great one.
Great, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was inspired by a historic tale that actually took place here at Engel Stadium.
Yeah.
Jackie Mitchell was a 17-year-old pitcher on a ladies baseball team called the Englettes. And nobody's sure if they really wanted to add her to the team or if it was a publicity stunt, but she did strike out Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and walk Tony Lazera, and it's historic. And that was the original purpose of the rhyming couplet or heroic couplet to record acts of athletic prowess, historic events, and acts of heroism, the heroic couplet. It later got used for satire, and now it's not used much at all. I like writing rhyming couplets, but the danger is if you overdo it or you're not careful with the rhythm, you end up sounding like Dr. Seuss.
Which isn't such a bad thing, depending.
Right.
If you're writing for children, it's not a bad thing at all.
Right.
He's got some pretty serious work. You know, I mean, it is,
Yeah.
it's cloaked in a children's story, but there's some real meat
Sure.
in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very serious
that's
themes. I just don't like the
You're-
made up words too much.
Yeah. But you're right. He wrote with cleverness, but he wrapped some serious themes in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And I think it was his book Yertle the Turtle was a satire of Hitler.
Yes, my favorite.
And the one with the people who wore stars on the left side and the other people wore stars on the right side. And they had a
The
big war about
snitches.
which side
Uh-huh.
you should wear your stars on.
And the
And they were fighting
Lorax.
Yeah,
over
Lorax.
something that made no
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, the Lorax is my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he-
anyhow-
Here's Who. They're all great.
Didn't
I
he
wrote
work
that-
during World War II to write propaganda for the Allies against Germany? Was that his
Robert,
job?
He may have. A lot of writers did.
Interesting.
But anyhow, I knew the story and I got inspired to write it after reading several historic poems in Strand and Boland's book,
It's a great
written
book.
in heroic couplets.
All right. Well,
There's even one by Anne Bradstreet in there,
Oh,
which goes back about as far as American literature
Yeah.
goes.
it does.
I mean, counting Anglo-American literature.
Right.
Of course, there are Native American stories that go back much further than that. But
Are you going to read, Mark?
I didn't really prepare anything. I do have my little chapbook called Dribble and Drool. This is a very short little poem. One of my favorites called Truth Bleeds. And I was at a prayer retreat in the mountains one day, and we took our little, I wrote this in 5 minutes and haven't changed hardly a word since then. This is one of those things, you know, sometimes you get a kind of what you just call an inspiration thing, and people might say, well, you should have revised it. I don't know. Talking. Truth bleeds. I looked on the mountain for truth, in the cracks, on the peaks. I looked in schools and books until my head hurt. I cried like a poet seeking truth, a taste, a nibble, aroma of truth is all I could find. Damn my mind. Then wisdom spoke to me. She cried, she felt, she loved, she healed, she gave birth. She bowed her head and surrendered her life on the bloody tree. And that's some theology to scratch your head. All right. I want to say I really enjoy being part of this group. Since I moved to Chattanooga and joined the Writers Guild, it's been really good for me to be with, rub shoulders with some really good writers, and I appreciate our friendship, and I wish John was here. And
Yeah.
I'll thank you all for your time, and don't go away. I'm going to end the recording now, and let's see, where is that? There's a little pause button. Okay, thanks to everyone from the Chattanooga Writers Guild.
Thank you.